And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network.
Today I'm talking about forgiveness. Jesus, before he died, as he's dying, he says simply, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And I want you to ask yourself, is there somebody who has gotten on your nerves so much, somebody who's maybe gone behind your back, intentionally tried to hurt you, take something from you, somebody who has hurt you emotionally, maybe hurt you physically, that you have a difficult time forgiving them? And not only do you have a difficult time forgiving them, but have you ever asked yourself, what does the Lord really require for me to forgive somebody? What does forgiveness really look like? If I forgive you, does that mean I have to forget what you've done? If I forgive you, does that mean I have to forget that you talked about me behind my back? If I forgive you, does that mean that we're gonna kiss and make up and act like, we never ever, had a problem? Can we go back to what it was like when we first met each other? And, forgiveness can be a difficult thing. But we see in Jesus, before he dies, him saying simply, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Jesus is all human, but he's also all God. And the human side of Jesus is wondering, can God and will God forgive those who are killing Jesus, who's the Son of God? But it is the divine side of Jesus who, basically is extending forgiveness to the world for the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the cross, a sacrifice that you and I might have life. So my friends, I'm going to be back in a minute. And when I come back, we're going to talk about that slow, agonizing death of Jesus and Jesus forgiving those who have hurt him and killed him. I'll be right back.
You know why I really love Nick Hood as a minister? I watched his father do it, and he took over for the church. And he was one of us, but he really turned out to be a great minister. I know it's hard, and that's something that I know that all ministers may not be doing what they're doing because for the right reasons, but I know it's hard. I know he's a beautiful man, and we've been knowing each other for over 50 years. I believe in him. He's inspired me in so many ways to do what I'm doing and try to be the best at it. Make sure you watch Nick Hood's ministries. You'll never be the same.
Welcome to Nicholas Hood III Ministries, a ministry of hope, spiritual inspiration, personal power guided by Christian love. May the power of God's Holy Spirit fall upon you as you sit back and enjoy today's program. I introduce you now to Pastor Nicholas Hood III.
Today I want to talk about forgiveness. What does it mean to forgive somebody else, particularly when they've gone out of their way to hurt you? When I think about Jesus dying on the cross, Luke 23 tells us, with his outstretched hands on the cross, nailed to the cross, from the hands, the feet, stabbed in his side, with a crown of thorns mashed on his head, people laughing at him, mocking him, saying, "He saved others, let us see him save himself." Jesus is heard to say, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And what we hear in Jesus uttering these words, I think, represents in part the twofold nature of Jesus. Jesus is on the one hand very human, but on the other hand, he's very God. And the unique thing about Jesus, unlike the gods that you hear about, all these other gods out there, where God is just sitting up there in heaven by God's self, is that God has come to earth in the form of a human being that we know of as Jesus. And this Jesus is very human on the one hand, but he's also very God. The very God portion of Jesus is God, the Creator, the Almighty One, the one who has the power to build up and to tear down, the one to redeem and the one to cast out. But this human side of God in Jesus Christ is just like you and just like me. The human side of God bleeds when he's cut. The human side of God cries when he's hurt. The human side of God in Jesus Christ is one who empathizes with you and me. When we're hungry, he's hungry. When we are lonely, he understands your loneliness. When we feel shut out, he is there with us to redeem us and to bring us back. And so Jesus, as he's dying on the cross in a most poignant of ways, says simply, he's reaching out as a human being. The human side of Jesus is calling out to the divine side of God, saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It's almost as if Jesus has forgotten that God is God. And in God's eminent capacity as being God, that God has the power to forgive. God has the power to redeem. But the dying Jesus is a suffering Jesus, a long-suffering Jesus. And this dying Jesus is concerned that the divine God, the creator of the world, the Father of Jesus, might turn a back on those who have been cruel to Jesus. And so he calls out in the most pitiful way, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And what we have learned about God is that God does forgive. God does forgive those who have stabbed Jesus, who have cut Jesus, who have laughed at Jesus, who have humiliated Jesus, that God has forgiven them. And it raises the question that I want to put before you today is, what does this forgiveness really look like? For Jesus to forgive and Jesus to ask God to forgive those who have killed Jesus, what does that really mean? Some people maintain that to forgive is to forget. I think that is ridiculous. I think it is impossible to forget when somebody has really hurt you. I think it's impossible. It's something to, I guess you could strive for it. I don't think God necessarily requires that you and I forget what other people have done. That long-term memory is there. But what God really wants, more than forgetting what another person has done to you, is God wants you and me not to dwell on evil. God wants you and me not to be so fixated on getting even with somebody else that we lose sight of this promise of Jesus Christ. And, we hear the Apostle Paul say in Ephesians, be angry, but do not sin. And think about, what does that mean? When Paul says, be angry, but do not sin, it's that do not sin part, which is forgiveness. You cannot forgive a person if you're sinning in your desire to get even. You just cannot do that. And so Jesus says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And I want you to ask yourself, who has really, over the course of my lifetime, who's really made me angry? Do I have a relative who tried to cheat me out of the inheritance? Do I know some man or some woman who every time they have a minute, they're trying to call or text my wife or call or text my husband? Is there somebody out there who has tried to defraud me financially? Is there somebody out there who tried to rip me off, who has tried to literally hurt me? Maybe a stranger. Can I get beyond somebody who has taken the life of somebody else that I know and I love? Lady in my church, minding her business, a good lady who's lived a good life, minding her business, got T-boned in her car by another lady who just was absent-minded. I don't think she was drunk. She just ran through, a red light and, hit my church member, and my church member died. And it's very easy to just become so fixated on anger at one person taking another person's life that you could lose your joy. And I don't know if there's anybody looking at this right now who's lost their joy. Lost your joy because somebody else did something mean to you. Or lost your joy because somebody didn't do what they should have done. Has there ever been a time in your life, maybe you're living with anger right now because of somebody else, the way they cheated you, the way they tried to humiliate you? Think about when you're a child and the cruel things that people say to other people. Maybe cruel things somebody said to you or said about you behind your back. It's easy to get your feelings so hurt that all you want to do is you're just living and breathing and eating and sleeping bad thoughts about how can I get even with this person. And you may have heard the expression, I don't get mad, I get even. But, the person who takes that attitude is a person who's really saying, I really am mad. They may say I'm not mad, but if you are just eating and breathing and snorting evil in trying to find ways to get back at somebody else, you've already lost the battle. And so when we hear Jesus on the cross in his lordship saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Even in dying, Jesus is showing us, how do you rise above the temptation to be evil? How do you rise above the temptation to just want to kill somebody else for something that they've done to you? I don't know about you, but in my life, I always seek that higher ground of the Lord. I seek the higher ground of Jesus because I know that in the Lord, there's a better way. I know that in the life lessons that we see in Jesus Christ, that there is a guidebook for how you and I should interact with other people, how you and I should feel, and how you and I should think. And that interaction, that rule book for interaction, is to be guided by love. And I want you to ask yourself, can I be guided by love when somebody else has been mean to me? Can I be guided by love when somebody else has been deceitful to me? Can I be guided by love when somebody has lied to my face, who looked me in the eye and said, I'm with you, but deep down inside, I know that they've gone another way and that they're thinking something else? Can I get beyond wanting to get mad and to get even with somebody else? That's what I see in Jesus. I see Jesus before he's dying, as he's dying. I see Jesus preparing himself so that he doesn't die a death that is a fruitless death. He is dying, even in death, Jesus is showing us how to live. And that way to live, my friends, is to get beyond your anger. And the way you get beyond your anger is to try to be like the Lord, to try to be loving, to try to be kind, to try to be patient, to try to be understanding, even when other people have not been understanding of you. How to be nice to somebody even when they've been deceitful to you. And I want you to just take stock right now before we go on this break. When I come back, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this whole business of forgiveness. And I want you to make a little list to yourself and ask yourself right now, is there somebody I really need to forgive? Is there somebody, and is there a wholesome way I can forgive without denying the pain, without denying the disappointment, without denying how bad I feel? How can I feel better without, at the same time, losing sight of the fact that I really have been defrauded emotionally? I've really been disengaged. I've been disemboweled personally because of the way somebody else treated me. How can I acknowledge these bad feelings and then move on to something more positive? So I'm going to be back in just a minute. And when I come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about forgiveness. Thanks so much for watching.
America used to be considered a godly country. It doesn't seem to be that way to me now. And I don't mean to be disrespectful or anything, but it's so many things they're okaying for the wrong reasons. There's not godly reason. People need to really open up the Bible, the Bible, and look in it and really get it into their heart. And this, the way the Reverend Hood is doing this is a comfortable way. It's not forcing anything on people. It's a comfortable way and a loving way for it to continue to move in that direction.
The way Reverend Hood presents it, you can understand it, and it makes you want to delve into the Bible even more so that you can see more, because it seems like the program goes off too fast. We need the bread of life.
We really do.
These days we need it more than ever. And Reverend Hood's ministry on TV is giving us our bread.
And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way of opening another door. I am convinced that God has been directing me every step of my life.
On the Word Network.
Today we're talking about forgiveness, and we start with Jesus on the cross saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Father, forgive them, even though they're killing me. Father, forgive them, even though they've cut me. They've nailed me to my hands. They've nailed me in my feet. I've been speared in my side. I've been beaten all night long before all this. But Father, I want you to forgive them. And I want you to ask yourself, has there ever been a time in your life when somebody really hurt your feelings? Has there ever been a time in your life when somebody broke your heart? Has there ever been a time when you felt like somebody went out of their way to hurt you and to take something that was yours? And could you really forgive them? Has there been a time in your life, maybe when somebody you loved ended up cheating on you, going out behind your back with somebody else? Has there been and what does it mean to forgive? If I forgive somebody who has cheated on me, if I forgive somebody who's given me, a venereal disease because they've been with somebody else, what does my forgiveness really look like? If I forgive you, does that mean I have to forget what you have done? Does it mean that I have to forget that you've hurt me? Does it mean that I am just going to go back to the way things were before we ever had any doubts about each other? Before you went behind my back and tried to take something that did not belong to you? And does it mean to totally forget? And I don't think it does. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that, to forgive is to forget. It doesn't really say that. The long-term memory is still there. But I believe that it's possible to get beyond anger, to get beyond your hurt, to get beyond your devastation, and to move on with life. I think you can also, in some cases, interact with people who've cheated on you. You can interact with people who've stolen from you. But the one thing I do believe is that in the process of forgiveness, even though you can move on, it's very difficult to forget. I've been in situations where, I've been around some people who've tried to take things from me. Some people who've tried to undercut me. Some who I found out later talked about me behind my back. And although, I don't harbor bad feelings about anybody, but I hate to say it, but every time I see somebody who's done me wrong, that thought does come in my mind. It said, Nick, you got to watch that person because they tried to take your church, or this person has put a bad word out there on you. And I think that's part of human nature, to be self-protecting. And if you don't protect yourself, I think that there's something wrong with how you're interacting with people. But by the same token, if you are fixated on getting even, have you ever heard people say, I don't get mad, I get even? If you're fixated on getting even, if you're fixated on hurting somebody, then you have not forgiven them. And I think that it is very, very possible to recognize the danger that a person in the hurt that somebody has brought your way, but at the same time to move on and to move forward in a healthy kind of way. I've mentioned in the past that I'm looking for friends of this ministry. And if my message today about forgiveness is meaningful to you, if my message today about moving on in spite of the hurt and devastation that somebody has brought your way, I want you to think about being a friend to this ministry. I'm looking for friends. I'm looking for people who are willing to support this ministry on a regular basis, to support it every month. Either, to write a contribution, a donation to the ministry is tax exempt. To do it, either you could send it every week, or you could send it twice a month, or you could send it once a month. We have some people who are donating to this ministry $50 a month. I have some who are giving actually $250 a month. And, there's one person who gives $2 every so often. I get a $2 bill. I don't know where you find a $2 bill. But you know what? I am so proud to receive that $2 bill because I know that means something to that individual. And there are others who, give amounts, different amounts of money. And for those contributions, I'm more than happy to provide a copy of my book of prayers. But more important than anything else is, I tell you, it's important financially to support a ministry like this because it's very expensive to broadcast at this level. But by the same token, not only are your contributions financially significant, but it's also important to me from an emotional standpoint. I tell you, just like when I get the $2 bill, that means a lot to me because I know that the fellow who sends me that $2 bill, for him, it is very important. I get a $10 contribution from a fellow who's an inmate in a state penitentiary in, I think it's Illinois or Indiana. And it's important to him. And I tell you, it's important to me because what that $10 gift lets me know is that means a lot to that inmate. It means a lot to a person who doesn't have much money at all. It means a lot to me when I receive a bigger contribution. One, because it helps to defray the cost of this ministry. But again, more than that, what it really is showing me is that this is a relevant ministry. This is a very relevant gospel that I'm preaching. And the only message that I'm preaching is that Jesus Christ is real and Jesus is worth following. And what is it that Jesus is worth following about? The message today. He's telling us, to forgive. And I tell you, it's very difficult to forgive when somebody's been mean to you. It's very difficult. It can be difficult to forgive when somebody else has tried to undercut you. It can be very, very difficult when somebody has broken your heart and you ask yourself, how in the world can I pick up the pieces of my own emotions when I'm fractured like a puzzle on the ground? How can I put this puzzle called life back together? And it can, feel like you are devastated and literally lower than a footprint. But Jesus Christ, before he died on the cross, tells for anybody who can hear him, he says, he's calling out to God, but he says it loud enough for everybody to hear him. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. They're intentionally beating me. Intentionally, these people have cut me. Intentionally, these people have driven nails in my hand, nails in my feet. They have intentionally speared me in the side. Intentionally, they've tried to humiliate me by jamming down on my forehead a crown of thorns. They've intentionally tried to humiliate me by taking off my clothes and putting on royal garments on me. And they're laughing at me, saying he saved others. Let us see him save himself. How can I die a peaceful death and not harbor any bad feelings? So Father, I'm forgiving these people, and I want you to forgive them because they know not what they do. My friends, today we're talking about forgiveness. And I hope this has been meaningful to you, and I hope to see you next week. Tell a friend that you like this ministry, and if God puts it on your heart, I want you to support this in your own way. God bless.
And the point that I'm making is that in everybody's life, at some point, there's a plan B. God is talking to us every step of the way. God is trying to show you something every step of the way. When things seem to be going wrong, that's God's way